It's being touted as the biggest drug bust in Canadian history and probably the most dramatic. A story covering 2 continents, a plane chase, and up to $1 billion worth of cocaine.
This was a big case. I considered it the largest case I'd ever worked.
We did not know anything about the pilot.
23 years for the pilot Boulanger. His name is Raymond Boulanger. Raymond Boulanger.
Well, I don't regret it. It was a hell of a lot of fun, let me tell you. It was quite a ride. I was involved in a lot of different operations.
Operations supervised by the CIA.
I used to think the CIA were the good guys, and then you start to realize the more you work for them, well, we're not the good guys. We're actually the bad guys. I talked with Pablo many times, and he was well into the CIA. They were all in bed with him. Cocaine. That's when it got interesting.
I was considered one of the biggest traffickers at that time. They asked me if I can help him, and I did.
The cartels have a history of violence, a wide trail of destruction and death.
Bad people.
It's the Far West.
It's all part of the game. My grandfather said there's 3 ways you can live life. You can lead, you can follow, or you can get the fuck out the way. I prefer to lead. Pablo Escobar is a roughneck guy, and he got around quite a bit. You know, he hustled, he was a good hustler, and then he got into the cocaine. And that's when it got interesting. In those days, it was mostly high-class people that did cocaine, partying, you know, movie stars, lawyers. It was called the recreational drug of the rich.
The demand was enormous here in the United States for cocaine.
The CIA are the biggest drug dealers in the world, bar none.
The CIA created phony air carriers during that time because there was a conflict in Nicaragua.
We were also doing counterinsurgency, which meant locating the enemy and then annihilating them. You'd find out where they were, and then you go in and bomb the living shit out of them. If you're not strong psychologically, then find another line of work.
To do charter flights, there had to be a chief pilot. Raymond's name came up. It was pretty random, actually, but he had all the qualifications needed to be a chief pilot.
Raymond likes a challenge. He's landed in pretty tight places. We were coming back from hunting, and Louis Paul was on the ground, and he was pointing at a shed at the airport. The antennas were shaking inside. I almost shit my pants. Fuck.
You're still alive? Yeah.
That's Raymond.
I don't know why we get married. It's women that wanted that. It was up to me. I wouldn't have got married. Well, I met her at the Rainbow Bar and Grill. We were having a few beers, and I met her, and we started dating. She was interesting, you know. She had an attractive look about her. We started chatting it up, and that's it. We started dating, and then the rest happened. Amber, I think she was born in '76. And then my son was born in '77. But anyway, the call of the wild came, and I had to go back to work and get back out of there. The nature of the business necessitates that it be kept a secret. You certainly have a double life. You can't, that's all takes place in the darkness, that stuff.
On vacation, what does he do on vacation? That's none of our business. It was his private life. But we always heard rumors. I'd always ask Raymond, hey, what happened there?
Oh, yeah?
Nothing, you know, on vacation, taking time off. But really, there's no proof.
I always work for myself. I'm a freelancer, you know, I'm an individual. I take contracts or I don't take them. I'm approached if they want my services for a job, and I'll evaluate whether I want to do it or not. We have the option to take a contract or not. I'll turn down more than I actually take. You're a mercenary, and mercenaries, we're apolitical, you know. If we're a mercenary, we're hired professionals to do a particular job. We're not hired for a political opinion. They're the ones that are paying us. We don't care what their politics are. That's all word of mouth. People get around. So when jobs come up, people contact you. And when you say on the Rolodex, it's just the word means you're on the list. And a Rolodex is those things you used to put on your decks alphabetically where you flip through for names. And you're looking for somebody's name, you went for the first letter and you go under B. So when operations come up, they say, oh yeah, I remember this guy, that guy, that guy. So you call up the people and you put together a group. So we get contracts from all these different organizations. That was all CIA people. You have to be careful when you say working for the CIA. We're not working for the CIA. We're doing the CIA's dirty work in black operations under dummy companies that have no name, that appear and disappear in days' notice. So one of their transport companies, which was Southern Air Transport.
Southern Air Transport.
Southern Air Transport was a fake company. It was a front for the CIA. The American Secret Service used it for various clandestine missions.
The CIA created phony air carriers during that time because there was a conflict in Nicaragua.
The target was to overthrow the Nicaraguan government run by Daniel Ortega, the communists. They wanted them out of there. Since the Boland Amendment was passed in Congress in 1985, the Americans weren't allowed to interfere in any kind of a government or allow monetary or financial or military assistance into overthrowing a government that had been democratically elected. So they have to do it in black operations so they don't get caught. I see. That's when the CIA brings guys like us into the picture. And that's our job. It's to overthrow the government that's in place. That's it.
The Sandinista National Liberation Front took over in Nicaragua, so it was a regime that was sympathetic to Cuba. A communist regime was being established in Nicaragua, and for Americans, that was completely and utterly unacceptable.
Well, you're in an armed conflict. People are trying to kill you, so it does get a little testy at times, yes, but you know that. That's what you're paid for. Yeah, they shoot at you with missiles and small arms fire and all that. We were also doing counterinsurgency, which meant locating the enemy and then annihilating them. You find out where they were, and then you go in and bomb the living shit out of them. You know, and then you come in and check the next day. If there were any survivors, you'd go in there and finish them off too. It's war. We're not going out there playing tiddlywinks. It's serious business.
So, quite rapidly, weapons were distributed, the Contras received equipment and arms.
The Contras? It's a movement that was created as a response to the Sandinista movement to end the communist takeover of Nicaragua. I believe it was mostly financed by the United States.
I have every intention of seeing that these people receive humanitarian support. And how that comes about, we'll just have to wait and see.
The CIA was supplying them with weapons, supplies, and money in order to overthrow the new Sandinista government.
It's not the kind of business you want everybody to know about. The Contras, we supply them with the weapons, the guns, the ammunition, the food. Yeah, it was all planned. We did what we had to do. We had the manifests, and they loaded the plane. I didn't check what was on board, and that wasn't my job.
Over time, Raymond noticed that when he delivered weapons or supplies to the Contras, the planes never came back empty.
I was on my way up to Miami, and I went in the back of there, and I saw a bag, and I lifted the tarpaulin on it. It was bales of cocaine. And then when I got back, I told my boss, I said, by the way, I said, we got cocaine in the airplane. He says, you know about that? I said, yeah. He says, mind your own business. He says, you're paid to fly the airplane. And believe me, it's a nasty world out there.
Financing the counterinsurgency required money, and that money came from cocaine trafficking. That's what was financing the purchase of weapons.
There is a number of documents that indicate that the CIA used drug trafficking to finance the counterinsurgency, mainly in Central America and Nicaragua.
Yeah, they were taking money from Escobar, they were taking the drugs from Escobar, and it was all getting patched around. Manuel Noriega had been a CIA asset since he was a student in university. Yeah, but the guy that really stirred shit up is Reagan. He didn't even know what the CIA was really up to. And then his buddy George Bush, who became his vice president, he's the one who was in charge of the CIA. I even saw them talking in the corner, you know, Noriega there, Escobar right there, and his brother there, and George Bush sitting over there with Felix Rodriguez right beside him, because they were keeping an eye on their little operation. Because don't forget, Bush, he was the head of the CIA at the time. If I saw it with my own eyes, and I don't give a shit what people think or other things, they can go, I don't care what people think, and I'm not out here to convince anybody of anything. I'm just telling you what it is, and that's it. The CIA are the biggest drug dealers in the world, bar none. And it's still the case today.
And when it comes to drugs and alcohol, just say no.
They were flying the cocaine into Los Angeles and Florida and Texas, and that's how they pay for their illegal operations. They got caught red-handed. There was an investigation. And they all got caught. And they all got convicted. And they all got pardoned. As contractors, we don't panic. The operation is shut down. We just go somewhere else. We're not involved in their fucking politics. That's their problem.
He was moving around all the time. He never stayed put for long. In fact, he was always doing many things at once. Sometimes he'd try to settle down for a while, but he clearly wasn't meant for that.
I spent my whole life on the road, in airplanes and traveling around the world, so it's not very conducive to being married. You're never home. So it's one or the other. You can't have everything your way. And in my entire career, I'd get home and just enough time to change my clothes and pack another suitcase and leave again. So in '86, I divorced my second wife in 1986. She thought I wasn't home enough, so I told her, sorry, but... Oh yeah, she moved out west to Ottawa for a while. She got remarried. So the kids stay with their mother. Yeah. How are they going to stay with me? I'm working in the jungles and deserts, Southeast Asia and South America. Yeah, I'm going to have my kids with me. Right. Doesn't work that way. Well, I have a good relationship with my kids. Never changed. They know who their dad is. They don't think I'm a criminal. It's a difficult life if you're raising a family. It doesn't work very well. You know, you're never home. And I don't regret it 1 inch. I love it. Wouldn't change it. It was late afternoon in Panama. We were walking on the golf course at the Howard Air Base, and we saw a bunch of guys playing soccer over there. They kicked the ball at one point, and it came rolling out to where we were. So we kicked the ball back in, and they just waved over to us and come over, and they waved some beer in the air, and we went over and had a few beers with them, and I recognized the face. I hadn't met him before, but I'd recognized him right away, and that's the first time I saw him. Pablo Escobar is a roughneck guy, and he got around quite a bit. You know, he hustled, he was a good hustler, and then he got into the cocaine. And that's when it got interesting. He got into the cocaine 84 or 85, somewhere around there. That's when cocaine started to go big. Pablo realized the potential, how much money was to be made on that, because everybody lost interest in the marijuana business. You know, there wasn't much profit in it to begin with. One of Pablo's close friends, actually, was his cousin, Gustavo, said, Ray, well, why the hell don't you come and fly with us? Cocaine didn't hit the market and become widely known until the mid-'80s. In those days, it was mostly high-class people that did cocaine, partying, you know, movie stars, lawyers, executives, people with money. It was called the recreational drug of the rich, and it still is.
Demand was starting to increase quite drastically, and a new market was created as a result.
Yeah, you could say that. The United States were the first major market for cocaine, and other countries followed suit. And cocaine got popular all over the world. Cocaine is a drug meant for pleasure, for partying. It has a market. It makes its way to anyone who wants it. At one point, drug trafficking supposedly accounted for 5% of Colombia's GDP. I think it's more than that.
Let's say the global cocaine market is 900 metric tons a year. Colombia produces 80% of that.
It seems that the climate, the geography, and the armed conflict created just the right conditions for Colombia to produce a huge amount, in fact, a huge amount of cocaine.
Pablo Escobar started exporting massive industrial amounts of cocaine, and that became the industrialization of the cocaine business. So it started to be going from 200 or 300 kilos at a time to tons. Because he had the roots into Miami, into Texas, into South California, and it was being controlled by Pablo and Pablo's people. And that's what the cartel was. So Pablo had not only his own cocaine, but he had the cut of everybody else's who was piggybacking with him because he had the doors. Yes, he had a lot of coke to sell, and it didn't cost him anything, and the others would go through him, and that's how it was. That's how cartels work. You have cartels that form together to control the prices, control the quality of the product, control the distribution, control the territories. They have agreements that are put in place that makes it function. It's like a corporation.
In Colombia, 10 people can get together and start a laboratory. They can produce and sell a ton of cocaine. The buyer has the responsibility of transporting it and delivering it to the US, Australia, and Canada, where it is sold.
I would tell them, this is the kind of airplane you got to use, and you can't load it more than that. You would show them technique. How would they pay me? Many ways. Money, property, vehicles, jewelry, art. They don't write checks. It's all cash. Because you have to understand each producer has his own trademark. Each producer has his own brand, and they can't mix that around. That thing can be traced from the moment it leaves the lab until the moment it's delivered. And some of them are wrapped in gold leaf paper. Quite proud of those ones. It said on them, the very best for our very best customers.
And the best way to get cocaine into the United States and to supply other markets was by airplane.
Pablo Escobar used to say that the real heroes in drug trafficking were his first plane pilots.
Piloting schools started popping up throughout the country.
A lot of people got their piloting license, and a whole air fleet was created for Colombia's drug traffickers.
Yeah, they didn't do any training. They just sent guys out there randomly. The guys weren't used to it at all. They hadn't many flying hours, and so a lot of them crashed, messed up. Well, you're flying overloaded airplanes. You're flying in extremely dangerous weather. It's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. Yeah. You want me to tell you more about it? It's dangerous. The first years I got involved in that, they were dropping off aircraft out of Cali to the rate of 20, 30 a year by using inexperienced pilots, flying in bad conditions when they didn't have to, at night when they didn't have to do that, because they were grossly overloading their airplanes. And I remember many occasions where I knew people that were doing that, and I said, you're going to kill people. Even here up front in the luggage compartment, we could easily put up to 60 kilos in here. They didn't understand aerodynamics and shit like that the airplane will fly at that weight. Way beyond that, it won't fly. It's just the entire cruise. You can't bring them back. They're all dead.
The Caribbean Sea is full of planes. It's a drug trafficking cemetery. Being a pilot in the drug trafficking industry was very lucrative. All the poor kids wanted to become hitmen. All the middle-class kids wanted to become pilots. The lifespan of those planes wasn't long.
The way they ran their operations, they obviously didn't understand much about aviation. Seriously. And I sat around the table. I said, why are you doing this? Well, and I said, well, you don't understand what's going on, do you? Because there's no percentage in losing a guy in the ocean and an aircraft and your load just because, you're being stupid. I said, there's smart ways to do it. And that's the way we changed our tactics a little. So I flipped all that around. I had started doing flights in the daytime, and I showed them how to penetrate air routes and hide among all the air traffic in the daytime. That's when we gave checkouts to the pilots that were able to handle those flights. But we trained them well, and we taught them how to stay safe. They don't understand the nature with the radars and all that. The radar can't track you more than 200 miles or 250 miles away. It doesn't have the range. Even if you fly at night, you're not going to hide from the radar, no matter what the weather or what the time. The radar is going to be there. They're not all geniuses, these drug traffickers, you know. I explained how to use air routes, how to use them to hide from air traffic. They went from losing 20, 30 airplanes a year down to 1 or 2 or 3. And the 1 or 2 or 3 was due to incompetence and taken off way overloaded, but nothing to do with the people that I work with.
That was Raymond Boulanger's heyday, working with drug cartels. He was really there during the golden age, when cocaine made it to Montreal and everywhere else in North America.
In 1977, DEA at the time seized 600 kilograms of cocaine for the whole year in the United States. 1988, DEA seized 60,000 kilos. So the demand was enormous here in the United States for cocaine. We basically were going after the air wing of the cartels.
And eventually, we would catch up to them, and we would start having seizures, and we would start penetrating different areas of their production.
Pablo didn't like the DEA. There was $500,000 U.S. rewards for anybody who would shoot a DEA. They were scared shitless, put it that way. They didn't dare.
They killed anyone linked to the DEA. They had their tongues cut off and threw them in the street. The DEA agents were very scared of him as well. Very scared.
So you can believe me, the DEA weren't hanging around in public places.
The Colombians called us the ugly ones. DEA. They didn't like us. Yeah, we always played hardball with them. Always. We never gave anybody a break. Bad people. Yeah. So, yeah, you had to play hardball with them.
Sometimes you get a contract, you'd only be on it for 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes it could be a month or 2 months. First flight I did to Mexico for the Medellín cartel, and that was into the desert in Nuevo León, southwest of Monterrey. Yeah. You take a look here, there was a strip here called Llanos de Baturi. It's an old 12-mile long lake that dried up. It was 12 miles long, and we used to land jets there. And when I arrived there, they didn't tell me who the reception was. You know, I knew it was all taken care of and all that kind of shit. I didn't really know who's there. I just wanted to be sure it's the right place, and that's the coordinates, and yeah. And when I got there and all the lights, I landed and all the lights came on, all I could see was soldiers. It's all soldiers all around it. Just off, shit. You know, the jig is up or something like that. You know, we're done. First trip into here and we're caught. And you could tell that we're military. These weren't haphazard, you know, hired thugs, you know. No, these were guys in military uniform. And sure enough, when I opened the door, it was a full lieutenant colonel that came to the aircraft. And he knew my name already because he was expecting me. And he called me by my name, Comandante John. And hey, come on, okay, we'll take you. And we had a cognac. He said, I'll drive you out of here. I'm the one that's going to drive you out of here. Oof. I was pretty relieved after that. About 20 minutes later, we left in a truck. I didn't know, and they didn't tell me that this was all arranged. And I got used to that after that, because it was either the military or the police. It was the either or. Everybody's on their payroll. That's either it. You either work for them or you get killed. It's that simple.
Colombia is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. I think that if corruption were to stop, hypothetically, for a month, the Colombian economy would completely fall apart. Immediately.
I left Cali with drugs on the plane. I left Medellín with drugs on the plane. The police cleared it all. It's simple. They're bought and paid for.
It's outrageous, the corruption in Colombia. It's, you know, it's a way of life, the corruption, so.
I had an informant that worked in the U.S. Embassy. I would pay him $5,000 every Saturday, and he would supply me with the whole map of the Caribbean and all the different zones they had, because they had different zones where they would send the aircraft to patrol. The U.S. Customs, the Coast Guard, and the DEA. I knew where they would take off from, what time they would leave, what type of aircraft it was, and that was good for us because we knew where they were going and we went the other way.
Very efficient, and it was taking us time in law enforcement to catch up to where they were at. We used to make a joke that we were dancing the Macarena and they were on a whole new dance.
Oh, everybody was in on the business. The politicians, the rebels, you name it, everybody was in on it. They're all corrupt, just to the yin-yang.
Some people will do anything for money, you know. You can pay $50 to get your neighbor shot if you want. You get the picture? If you can get a guy shot for $50, nothing's complicated.
The country has been destroyed by narco-trafficking. The proportion of corruption is terrifying.
It smells of death. People know that a whole slew of people have blood on their hands.
When Escobar was around and narco-terrorism, journalists were being killed like flies in the country. I have 9 bodyguards and 2 bulletproof vehicles. I'd be dead or else. And that's just because I'm a journalist. I'm not involved in narco-trafficking.
23 days ago, I was told I have 1 month to live. Today, I have 7 left.
If you get caught in a crossfire in the drug business, tough shit, buddy. You shouldn't have been there. You know, there's no such a thing as an innocent victim. Don't give me that shit. So you think I'm going to feel empathy for dead people in the drug business? Get the hell out of my face. I'm not ever going to feel empathy for that. If you're not strong psychologically, then find another line of work. There's all kinds of greed people involved. You're dealing with criminal elements of the lowest kind, you know, from all the way to the bottom, the scum bucket, to the top, to the elite, the ruling class. And some of them, you know, the little crooks around there, we call them little chichipatas, they'll pass the word around to their friends. You know, well, there's a shipment going to be passing up there, it's going to go, yeah. So they'll get together, a little gang of them, and they'll arm themselves to the teeth and try and hijack the load.
See, yeah, they rarely survive.
You know, so we're armed to the teeth, too. We were very heavily armed. I always had my a Beretta 9mm in the back of my jeans, even for normal traveling around in Colombia.
I used it.
Sure enough, they had laid logs across the trail so that you couldn't get around. You had to actually get out. So the other truck held off in the back, and then one truck got up close enough when the shooting started, and that was it. We expected it. It lasted probably maybe 20 minutes, and when it was finished, there was none of them left.
Well, we're armed to the teeth. We reacted. It's just either shoot or get shot, one or the other.
When the shooting starts like that, there's a lot of noise going on, and it goes zzz, and you could actually feel the heat off the bugger if it comes close enough.
It's not a job that helps you live a long time.
I'm here today and they're not, so there's your answer. I survived, they didn't. It's just thrilling, it's exhilarating. And after that, you just say, hot damn, okay, and that's all over. And then you get over there and you go get whiskey and smoke a few cigars, and then we go on to the next job. You know, it takes a couple of days for the adrenaline to wear off. Even after a long drug flight, you know, a successful drug flight, we'd take 3 or 4 days, and we do nothing but hang around the pool and get drunk, you know, and fool around with the girls, and, you know, smoke a few joints and chill out until the next job. But after 3 or 4 days, you get antsy. It's okay, you know, where's the next job, you know? you want to be going all the time, you know? It takes a while.
He was really excited by it. He'd take his plane and fly. It rained. He went through the jungle. It was all about the adrenaline. He thrived on it. It was his drug of choice. He was his own worst enemy. When you think about it, he always wanted a bigger rush, more excitement.
He knew how to fly. He knew the risk he was taking. He was an adrenaline freak, probably, like they all are.
dangerous. It's fun. It's adrenaline buzz. It's a boost. You know, you become an adrenaline junkie. And frankly, we're all adrenaline junkies when we're in that business. We thrive on the adrenaline. The buzz is extraordinary. The money's secondary.
But it was a tug of war. We were going back and forth, and many times it didn't feel like we were winning the war, but at times we did.
We can't do what the cartels do. They could kill people, they could pay off people, they could threaten people. So they have that capability, and we didn't have it.
So there were people in Colombia that were very much affected, and the citizens of Colombia, the amount of violence that they had to put up with, and innocent people that were in the crossfire, the United States bears a burden because we create the demand.
It's not worth lying to ourselves anymore. If drugs enter the United States, it's because the United States is letting them in. There isn't a shortage of cocaine for users in Canada or the United States. There isn't a single dose missing. So where is the fight against drugs happening? Who's taking care of it? It's a joke.
This drug war is a sham. It's false. It's fake. That's called corruption and greed. You know, money is evil. Don't forget the old saying, the root of evil is money. I know pilots that were making an average of $3 to $4 million every 2 or 3 days. After 85, I don't think I ever did a flight under $3 million. I kept money up here, yeah, and my dad used to hide it in his double wall. Because I knew young guys that were 25, 30 years old and had $15, $20 million in their basement stashed. But they were so nervous, they would go to the restaurant, and after about an hour, they're all nervous and they want to go home. The money ruined their life. It's all cash, and so much of it, they weigh it. They don't even count it anymore. They just weigh it. That pallet, that's 10 million, that's 50 million, that's 100 million.
I saw warehouses in Cali, which stacked to the ceiling.
That led to huge fortunes appearing throughout Colombia. The fortunes were so large, there was so much money, it became obvious because drug traffickers were spending so much.
The flashers are always there. The fancy cars in Miami and all that, the Miami Vice scene. These huge houses with all the art, to show off that they got money. So I don't understand people's fascination with money. You want it because you don't have it. But when you got too much of it, you don't want it that much, believe me. It's more problems than it really brings.
That'd be a good question to ask him. Where's his money?
Fuck off. Don't like it complicated. I know where my box is. And it isn't in some bank.
The business of the DEA now was not going after the damn drugs anymore. They were going after the money. The whole idea was to seize the money.
We conducted our investigation into the Colombian aviation units. The original strategy would start out with the purchase of an aircraft. As they went up in size, the cost of the plane went up. They could afford to walk away from that expense because they were making so much money on the cocaine. The real difficulty was to purchase the plane and try to keep it as long as they could.
You take the airplanes away from them, they had a hard time transporting the cocaine.
You know, the aircraft gets seized on drug loads. I would get a call, and they would say, well, we got this one seized such and such a time. It'll be up for auction on that date and that date. And that was it. So I would call up, and I would check the list and all that. And I'd call the sheriff, and I'd register my company in there. Yeah, I'm going to be there. I want to bid on that aircraft, and that aircraft.
To help the Colombians out, he went to the United States with cash. He'd buy back the planes the DEA had seized, and he'd bring them back to Colombia.
But, you know, I would never specifically go there and register to bid on a particular aircraft. I would bid on 5 or 6 or 7, which I had no intention of acquiring. But I would focus on the one that they wanted me. They said, that's the one we want, go get it.
Some of those planes were $400,000, $500,000, up to $1 million.
And it made sense. You follow the money, you could find where the bad guys are.
I had got a call to pick up a Mitsubishi Marquis. I said, yeah, okay.
An MU2 that belonged to one of the Medellín's rings, and I got a call from the cartel.
So I had brought 10% with me in cash. That day I had $65,000 US in my briefcase to go for that deal.
Usually you leave a deposit. After you go to the bank, you pay the rest and you get the plane. But that time I drove with my dad to Burlington to take a flight down there.
And I had it in my briefcase, and I was in a rush to get to Florida because the auction was the next day. Anyway, they pulled me in and they said, "What you have in the briefcase?" I said, "Money." They said, "Did you declare it?" "No."
They said, "Park your car there." Park the car, search the car, all that. "What do you have in your briefcase?" Well, I said, "Money and documents." "Where are you going?" "I'm going to an auction."
Well, so in the office, so they take it out, and then they counted every bill, and they registered every serial number. So that took about 3.5 hours.
We had a direct link between drug money being used to buy aircraft that were used to fly cocaine into Mexico that was targeted for the United States. And as an enforcement technique, we would use those opportunities for surveillance and for tracing the money back to the Colombian organizations.
And not only that, when they were questioning me and all that, they sent a fax to the sheriff's office in Broward County, and he returned back, "Oh yeah, we know this guy very well. He comes here often. His company's registered. Yes, he does come here. Yes, he's registered to come. He's going to be at the auction tomorrow. That's probably." And the DEA said, no, you're going there to buy drugs. Because once they get their hands on the money, that's it. My dad was with me, and he had 20 grand on him because he was going down to play the casinos and have some fun. So he got arrested too because he didn't declare it. I did 13 months in the penitentiary in the States for that. My dad did 12 months. The charge read, "Failure to declare a monetary transaction exceeding $10,000. And they sent me and my dad to Danbury, Connecticut after that. Oh, he took a big, my dad just laughed. He just, we get on with it, just deal with it. We had fun, it was pretty relaxed. And we had, there was some very high level financial criminals.
Yeah, but he had his own little sideline going on, and I won't talk about it. That was his business. My old man had his own little dealings.
But he was very generously compensated for his time.
According to him, it was fun. He taught inmates French and all. He doesn't seem scarred by the experience.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed myself, and it was a good time.
And during his incarceration in an American prison, he met a Belgian man who sold weapons and other stuff to various countries.
But I got into the arms business with him.
We sold weapons to various clients that needed them for various reasons, let's say. We oversaw local distribution in the Middle East and Africa. I had Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia as clients. I supplied them with bullets for the police, 9mm actually.
As a businessman, Raymond Boulanger's career was opportunistic. Weapons trafficking, drug trafficking aren't ends in themselves for him. They're a means to a living and adventurous lifestyle.
My dad was like that, and I'm like him. I do things my way. I've always been like that.
When he got out of jail, Raymond turned to selling weapons, aircraft parts, and aircrafts in countries that needed to be supplied clandestinely because they were on the US's blacklist.
He served as liaison between the buyer and the seller. He was the middleman that both parties knew and that delivered the merchandise. He was the one trusted with the merchandise, and he ensured that everything was delivered according to plan.
Belgium is really the center for arms businesses, everybody's represented. It's also the headquarters for NATO. Yeah, actually, we were just down the street from NATO. Kitty Cat across the corner was the NATO headquarters. And that was our office, just right next to them. So you'd get to meet all the people from these countries and make your contacts and take your orders. So we would meet all the different people, the military attachés and all that, and diplomatic soirees.
He sent me a list every month, a list of what they needed. I made the purchases.
There are lenient laws in Belgium,
Belgian regulations work in favor, let's say, of clandestine and illegal operations of weapons trafficking, as they are, of course, quite lucrative.
I think it's sick what people do to make a buck in it.
So I would go out and shop for that. Kept me pretty well on the go. It's quite exciting. Sometimes I had to bribe people to get certain parts made because they were strict with military specification numbers on them. So I bribed people. I only remember a couple of occasions where I had to collect money, and we won't discuss the collection techniques here. They were given a choice. They either cooperated or they got shot. And they would be confronted with the briefcase and the gun. You either cooperate with us or you get killed. It's as simple as that.
My clientele in my portfolio was Iran. Iran was my #1 client.
Weapons were being trafficked because of the United States embargo on the Middle East. That actually created business opportunities for some. So Merrick's would call on Raymond's services to sell radar parts and weapons parts.
I would buy the products they needed and sell them for a Swiss company, a Belgian company, and another one. The stuff eventually made it to Iran. Missiles, that kind of stuff, mines, grenades, those kind of explosives. I was mostly specialized in aircraft engines and parts. I sold all kinds of stuff for airplanes. Brake parts, propeller parts, speed drive parts. I would make a bunch of purchases and deliver them all at once.
I was having tires made for the Iranians for their F-4 Phantom jets, which were American jets. So they couldn't really fly them anymore because they weren't allowed to get any more parts. So I would buy all the different parts for that, shipped through, cleared through a duty-free zone that I had here in a warehouse in Montreal. But the product actually never came here, and sold them to a dummy company in Switzerland, which was really the Iranians. So you get the idea, you know, we don't mind. The Americans can embargo everything all they goddamn well want. We couldn't give a shit. There's always a way to get around it.
But I also had other clients. Libya was one of my clients, and I went to Libya on a regular basis.
Libya, at the time, was under a dictator's control, Colonel Gaddafi. Things were very heated with the United States. And, of course, Libya needed parts for its civil aircrafts and military aircrafts. And since Belgium is home to an international weapons market, it was probably the easiest place, or one of the easiest places, to buy those kinds of parts.
I would leave from Geneva and go to Tripoli. And once in Tripoli, I would leave Tripoli and I'd go do my inspections in the middle of the desert. Here at a little point here, it's called Beda.
That was an oil rig, basically. It was an operating base. They had a big runway built there. They had a hangar. They had people that rotated in and out of there. So I'd arrive in Libya. They'd escort me to the hotel. I'd spend the night in the hotel. Next morning, I'd get on Libyan Airlines. I'd go into the desert in Beda, do all my thing there. The colonels there would meet me. I had an envelope that I used to carry. It was a bribe. It was not mine. It was being carried on behalf of another company. There was a Canadian company that was doing business in there, and that was who belonged to the envelope that I gave to the colonel. I mean, I didn't get to open the envelope, you know. But I knew what was in it, and I knew why, and I knew where it came from. Of course, I got paid for that. I didn't do that free. Every time I dropped the stupid envelope, that cost him $50,000.
I'm sure that when he was working in Belgium and he'd go off on missions, whether in Iran, Libya, or any other country, I'm sure he was perfectly well kept. He must have been wearing the best suits. He was probably wearing a Rolex. I am absolutely certain that he knew how to present himself.
Well, the Americans were really curious, and they wanted to know what the hell was going on, because I'm traveling into Libya and I'm traveling into Iran, who had been declared enemies of the United States and embargoed. So I was actually trading with their enemy, you know. But they really couldn't charge me. I'm a Canadian citizen, and Canadians, we're allowed to do business with Iran.
Oh, so I did that for a few years. I had a good run over there.
But at some point, Remember that in the 90s, there was a conflict in Iraq between the US and Iraq. That's when the Gulf War happened. And Raymond Boulanger at that point felt things were going to fall apart. He decided to completely retire from that line of commerce. That's one of the reasons why, when Raymond Boulanger got that phone call asking to import large quantities of cocaine into Quebec, he was interested.
People had tried and they said it was impossible, it couldn't be done. And I said, that's ridiculous. Of course it could be done. There's no such thing as impossible. It just takes a little longer to do the impossible, that's all. But, you know, that becomes a question of competence.
For about 3 months, the DEA was investigating a Colombian ring that was preparing to import cocaine.
This was a big case. I considered it the largest case I'd ever worked. And the fact that it's still the largest seizure in Canada today gives you an idea of its scope and how important it was.
We did not know anything about the pilot in the Casey case.
I never heard of anyone having this degree of experience with that type of risk. It was probably a somewhat unique type of a pilot that would take on this kind of a challenge.